dessert today. I'm pretty sure you guys know what it is, but it is the Middle Eastern pastry that has like the spice nuts in the middle, and then you have layers and layers of crunchy phyllo on the top and the bottom, and then they spoon it over with a really nice sweet syrup when it's all done. So I think just from that, it sounds like it's a really complicated dessert to make, but it's really just about stacking the phyllo dough on top of one another, and it's actually super simple to make, and it's super delicious. So I can't wait to show you guys the recipe. So let's head over to the kitchen and then let's get started.
Okay guys, so we're going to start off by toasting up some nuts, and you can use whatever nuts you want, but I have 1.5 cups of walnuts, half a cup of sliced almonds, and a 350-degree oven for about 10 minutes until it turns kind of golden brown and starts smelling really good. Meanwhile, you want to start making your syrup for, this is for you to pour in at the end. So I have 1.5 cups of water in there, 2 tablespoons of oolong tea, and then 1.5 cups of sugar. And you can substitute some of the sugar for stevia or a sugar substitute if you don't want to add too much. So bring this to a boil and then turn it down to a simmer and simmer for about 10 minutes just until it thickens up a bit, and then keep it cool. Now, if you guys want to add different spices to this is kind of up to you, rose water or whatnot. Feel free to add this in, and then towards the end, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of honey. If this is a vegan recipe, you can feel free to use agave or just stick to the sugar syrup. So these are the nuts that have been cooled, and I'm just going to chop them up into small pieces so that when you bite into them, nothing's going to be too big, nothing's going to be too small. And then to that, I'm going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg and then 1.5 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Again, if you guys like spices like cardamom or I don't know, like allspice or something, feel free to add that in. This is just kind of more of the classic recipe, and that's basically it for the filling. Super simple. So right here I have a cup of coconut oil and then a cup of earth balance just to provide some of that buttery flavor to add back in. I did put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds just to make sure that everything was liquefied. So this is phyllo dough. The thing that you guys have to remember about phyllo is to make sure and defrost it the day before, because it really does not work if you have frozen phyllo dough. And then also that was just a wet towel in case if the phyllo starts drying out on you while you're working with it, because that is probably the second worst thing other than frozen phyllo dough is when it starts cracking, because then it's really hard to work with, okay? So you can actually see that this phyllo dough actually unrolls and unwraps into one really long piece. I'm just going to cut it in half right now. The top part will be for kind of the bottom part of the baklava, and then the top part is going to be for the top, and then in between is going to be that nut mixture, okay? So I have my pan, I think it's a 13.5 by, I don't know, 8. It's one of those. So I started buttering the bottom first, and then with each layer, you don't want to soak it in with butter. So just a really light layer, which will help to separate it as it starts baking. So you're kind of creating small layers, very much like puff pastry, okay? And then continue layering it one on top of the other. I think that there was going to be about 20 sheets. Afterwards, you get to the middle. This part is super easy. Just dump in the nuts, make sure that everything is kind of evenly distributed and that you have an even layer, okay? And so that's really it for that. I'm going to put in a little bit of lemon zest, because that kind of really brightens this this dessert up, because otherwise it's kind of just more of like the spices and it's a little bit dull. So the lemon zest definitely kind of adds, it doesn't add a kick too much, but it does brighten this whole dish, and I definitely think super necessary. Afterwards, do the whole thing over again. So it's going to be about 20 sheets, lightly brush it. You're going to get all the way to the top. So this is going to be our last layer, and then this part is actually super important. So after this guy bakes up, the layers up on top become super crunchy and super crispy, so trying to cut into it, you'll only break the tops into really small pieces, and it becomes really difficult to cut. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting it actually halfway through up until I reach the nuts, and I'm doing it in just a diagonal pattern. If you want straighter or more square baklava pieces, you can do that, and then after it finishes baking, I will kind of finish cutting the rest. And then just by kind of scoring this up on top, it makes it a lot easier to cut afterwards, and then just for presentation wise, you're going to have a lot nicer of pieces. So 350 degrees for 45 to 50 minutes, and you will see when it's done, because it's nice and golden brown, and you can see that the layers are separating. So immediately after you take it out of the oven, while everything is still warm, you want to pour this cool syrup over. And the Armenian bakery owner that taught me how to do this swears by pouring the syrup over the baklava while it is still hot, and she says that it will keep everything nice and crunchy, so you're not going to get soggy pieces afterwards. So I've always done it like this. I've never had a problem. So just make sure to strain pouring that syrup out, and it looks like there's a lot to pour in, but actually everything will soak up and it'll be nice and amazing. So I started cutting into this already. Actually, I started eating it a little bit, but you can start seeing the layers up top are nice and crunchy, and then you have that middle kind of nutty layer that is soaked through with the syrup, and then you have the bottom layer. And sometimes I like the bottom layer even more because that's the part where like you really taste all of the butter and the syrup, and then kind of like the spices from the nuts, and all of those flavors are accumulated on the bottom. So it's a nice dichotomy because the bottom part is kind of nice and soft and soaked with this amazing syrup and butter, and then you have the middle part, which are the spiced nuts, and then the nice top part, which is just kind of, it's drier but it's really crunchy, so it adds a lot to the texture of the dessert. Anyways, guys, I hope that you found this recipe super easy and that you'll try to make it, because it does look really impressive, but it doesn't take a long time to make at all. And oh man, it is so delicious, especially for the holidays. I think it's just a really impressive showpiece. Anyways, guys, I hope you like the recipe, and as usual, if you want to see more recipes like this, please hit like and subscribe, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye!